Purple Daily is daily Vikings entertainment. We just want the Vikings to win a Super Bowl before we die.
I will ride with this group.
Seriously, man. Please.
And away we go.
Happy draft week. Purple Daily NFL takes.
Bum, bum, bum.
What was that song?
I said, play it. It's draft week. It's draft week. Draft week.
Flat.
You're a little flat and you're off tempo.
Yeah.
We need a dun da 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 dun. It's time for a draft week now. It's time for a draft week now.
I was trying to mix in my own brand. What you guys might consider it to be flat and off tempo, but I consider it to be Dylan-esque. You know what? Some of the greats have not
It's time for draft.
have not been appreciated. Some of the greats have not been appreciated until
picks
it's too late.
Will there be trade backs?
Yeah.
That's fine. That's fine.
This is our weekly place for bad singing and NFL takes. Also some Viking stuff sprinkled in here because it is Purple Daily NFL takes. But the draft party is in 2 days, boys. The Purple Daily draft party presented by Standard Heating and Air Conditioning. And I know that as of this morning, we had only 5 VIP tickets left. So it's possible those are gone as I'm telling you about this. There are some limited general admission tickets left. But we are back at the Fillmore on Thursday at 7 p.m. We go live on the Purple Daily YouTube channel. Doors open at 5 o'clock for VIP, 5:30 for general admission. You can find out more information at scorenorth.com/draft. The pre-party at Brixworth begins at 3:30 just across the street. Chuck Foreman, Vikings legend, is going to be there. Judd Zulgad, Vikings legend, is going to be there as well, at least Vikings media legend. Standard Heating and Air Conditioning, 2 men in a junk truck, Roku. We appreciate all of the partners that help us put this thing on for a 4th consecutive year.
I've been silenced now. I'm not singing anymore.
No, you can still sing.
No, I tried to sing. I tried to have fun. Tried to bring fun to the show. I've been silenced.
This might bring some fun to the show here. The Athletic put together, so this is an exercise that we actually dipped our toes into a couple weeks ago. It was a Saturday checkdown episode, and we did an exercise looking back at the Vikings' last 10 drafts, and we determined that the Vikings hit on 35% of their draft picks over a 10-year period from 2014 through 23. We really had no idea how that related to the rest of the 31 teams. Well, the Athletic came in, and they did a 5-year exercise for the entire league, the last 5 drafts for every team. Nick Baumgardner is the author here. He charted the number of picks each team had, and the criteria for ranking the teams and how well they drafted was Pro Bowl selections, starting seasons. So if you drafted a player who started for 5 years, that's 5 starting seasons for that player. And then the approximate value metric created by Pro Football Reference is kind of a loose guideline here. So my take is twofold. The Vikings obviously need to be better at drafting. They are 26th on this list last 5 years. And B, if you draft well, you play well. Here's the top of the list. Number 1, the number 1 drafting team over the last 5 years, the Detroit Lions. 13 Pro Bowl seasons, 35 starting seasons. Penei Sewell, Amon-Ra St. Brown. That even includes a complete whiff on Jeff Okudah, who was the number 3 pick in 2020. Now he's in Brian Flores' cornerback rehabilitation school. Kansas City Chiefs, number 2 on this list. Baltimore Ravens, the 3rd best drafting team. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 4th. And you see that they, with Tom Brady, they won a Super Bowl, but the roster they've put together and then adding Baker Mayfield, it has essentially made Baker Mayfield a top 10 quarterback in the league. The only outlier in the top 5 is the Dallas Cowboys, who've apparently been the 5th best drafting team, and they have tanked. But they did have 3 straight 12-win seasons before last year's tank job. Also in the top 10, Buffalo Bills, Philadelphia Eagles, Miami Dolphins, who've put together a couple winning seasons. But the Vikings are just outside the bottom 5 on this list from The Athletic.
So that dates back, you said 5 years?
Yep.
So 2 years
20,
of 2 years of Spielman, and then 3 years of Kwesi. Yeah, I mean, Rick went from I thought being in 2015 to about 18, not bad, right? And then like the last 2 years, tons of picks didn't work out well. The 2022 draft, of course, throws a complete wrench in because it's a disaster. There is no reason why you should not get, and it feels like the Vikings have not done a great job of this. There's no reason why you shouldn't get more, just if nothing else, contributors. Like the amount of busts that we can go through from the last 5 years is way too wide, and like it ranges the entire draft, first round picks, second round picks. So yeah, they definitely do, and it feels like if there's anything that's going to be holding this team back right now, it's that. Like, imagine if they had, let's just say they had another defensive tackle that they had taken in the first round now. And that guy was contributing. Thus, you don't have to go sign a veteran. And now you've got, so it does feel like that is the one fly that remains in the ointment right now. And it's not just first round picks. It's the entire drafts.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Real quick, a follow-up on this. So the Vikings have had 4 Pro Bowl seasons drafted in the last 5 years. 4. The Lions have had 13.
Yeah.
The Ravens have had 11. The Cowboys have had 15.
Yep.
The Bengals have had 6. The Bengals have actually drafted fairly well in some spots. Eagles have had 7. So, yeah, gotta be sharper.
Doing an audit over the last, 15 to 20 years of just the Lions draft would be such an interesting exercise in seeing how a franchise can finally get it.
Yeah.
Like if you go back and look at some of those, aside from, for instance, Calvin Johnson, who is just a great player. But when you go back and look at, what was it, Charles Rogers that they took, and he didn't succeed. And just the overall drafts, the ineptitude, the complete buffoonery in Detroit. And Brad Holmes has finally changed that. Like that is, Dan Campbell done a great job. But like if you want to identify, why are the Detroit Lions now, after all of this time, good? I think it starts and ends with the draft.
Keep in mind, too, the Vikings have the only 2 top 20 selections they have made in the last 5 years were McCarthy and Dallas Turner. Everything else, I mean, they had chances, I think, both the Lewis Cine draft and the Darisaw draft where they were inside the top 20, right, and they traded down. Obviously, the Lewis Cine thing did not work out. Trading down for Darisaw was a very good decision. But they've only had 2 picks in the top 20 in the last 5 years, and they came last season, and 2 of them basically didn't play last year.
Yep. So, yeah, the fact that they didn't play last year definitely, as the Athletic points out, it impacts their ranking if those guys had jumped in and played well, but we don't know if they're good yet. We think that they have a good potential to be good, but
right.
We don't know. All right.
Hang on to your hats, ladies and gentlemen. Hang on to your hats, because this draft could be crazy Thursday night. Draft party, okay? Let me give you 2 things. One, for the first time in the modern era, which I believe in this case traces back to 1967. So far, there have been no first-round picks traded. Nothing's been done because nobody knows where anyone's going. So like I'm not going to trade up to 3 necessarily if I think I can get my guy at 6 or 7. Mm-hmm. The other thing is what dovetails in perfectly and makes this so much fun potentially, the quarterback situation. It's a dearth of QBs. There is a growing feeling among the experts. This means nothing, but it's intriguing. There's a growing feeling among the experts that quarterbacks, that Shedeur might fall. The other one that I heard this morning on Get Up, which was intriguing, was some people are now thinking Jackson Dart is going to go before Shedeur. This is going to be a complete cluster bleep, and I am here for it.
Yeah, the more that this quarterback stuff gains steam, and now it's like there might be 4 quarterbacks taken in the first round. So we now have Jalen Milroe and Jackson Dart have gone from not first round guys to, they're flying up, and Jalen Milroe is going to be there at the draft. I think you're going to have at least 2 or 3 teams reach for a quarterback to save their franchise or to save their desperate situation. And that's almost always a recipe for a disaster or a quarterback being put in a situation that he's not ready for. And I'm looking at the Browns. The Browns are not ready to draft a quarterback. So, and it sounds like the steam is more Travis Hunter at 2 than Shedeur Sanders now,
which I love.
Yeah, that would make more sense.
That's my guy.
build your team. Build your team.
And he's dynamic.
Yeah, I think, and by the way, like the PFF and Kuiper big boards have Travis Hunter as the number 1 player on the board. Cam Ward, actually. So I'm looking at the Titans too, by the way. Are you sure about Cam Ward?
Sure about that?
You sure?
I love this. I love where you're going because I'm not convinced that they won't take Hunter if they pick and stick.
Mel Kiper has Cam Ward outside his top 5 on the big board, and PFF has Cam Ward 20th.
Yeah.
He's still like the first or second ranked quarterback, but it's like teams get the Titans are like, we need a quarterback. We're drafting number 1. So let's draft. Well, what if you're passing up on 2 or 3 other players that are generational at different positions? And I get it, quarterback is the most important, but I would say Titans, Browns, Giants don't feel like they're. And plus, the Giants have 2 veterans. You can buy yourself a year.
Saints.
And the Saints, those are all teams that could easily reach and make a big mistake where like a generational defensive tackle is the next pick after they draft their bust quarterback.
So technically, shouldn't the Saints, and I don't know if Texas guy Kellen Moore is this good, but let's hypothetically say that he's been hired as sort of the Kevin O'Connell, right? That type. Shouldn't he be the guy to say, I don't like these guys that much. We very well might be awful, but if we're awful, you're going to have a quarterback class, I think in 2026 that's better.
Yeah.
Arch Manning's in that class, and I don't know that he's great. But my point is, I think if I hire a quarterback whisperer, I think that gives me more license to be confident if I do pass on QBs. It feels to me like the desperate teams are poorly run, and lots of times the coaches is just like, I need a quarterback. The Kellen Moores of the world should say, no, I'm going to identify a quarterback.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we'll get a guy to plug in. Worst case, we get a guy to plug in for a season. We're not good. Guess what we get? A higher draft pick.
But also there's a certain level of patience. Because right now, who's their guy? It's like their 3rd round pick, Spencer Rattler.
Yeah.
And like when the Vikings were trying to make that decision, they had Kirk Cousins in their back pocket. We could just keep extending Kirk, and we don't need to settle for a Will Levis. We got Kirk. So let's just go year to year until we see a draft class that we really like. Then we can make that tough decision. If you're the Saints, and it's like, Spencer Rattler is not an established guy. We need to find someone, or we commit to losing 11 or 12 games. But I'm with you. I don't think it'd be the worst thing in the world as they continue for 10 years to straighten out their books and their cap situation. If you have a chance to take an incredible interior defensive lineman or an offensive lineman that sets up your trenches,
right,
and then go quarterback in a year from now, you're not going to fix it all if you're the Saints or the Browns in this draft class with this quarterback class.
Absolutely.
Okay.
All right, let's fire up some Chicago Bears discourse here on NFL takes. I guess my NFL take is, can the Bears nail this draft? Because they have 3 picks in the first 41 selections of this year's draft. They own the 10th, the 39th, and the 41st. So 3 picks in the first 41. Now, Ryan Poles hasn't really necessarily lived up to maybe what he said he was going to do, which was take back the North. But they obviously had a big free agency, just like the Vikings. They went out and signed a bunch of players. They're trying to support Caleb. They have a new head coach who's supposed to innovate things. How much are we fearing the Chicago Bears nailing this draft? I mean, they're kind of in a similar position with the Vikings, right? Big spenders in free agency. They obviously have more of allotment of picks in this year's draft than the Vikings do going into it. But I mean, 3 selections in the first 41, 3 picks in the first 41 selections. That's pretty damn good, man, if they can nail both these. And hell, probably, even though there hasn't been a trade yet announced in the draft, is this a team to watch that could trade up? Like, is this a team that could maybe get back into the first round and snag someone at the back end of it if they just stick at pick 10?
Yeah, they are a team that could easily get aggressive and make a move. I would say to your question, is there something they could do to scare the Vikings? I would say, because they're picking 10th, I don't think Ashton Genty is going to be there at 10, but they could move up. They definitely have the ammunition. And I heard our guy Peter Schrager, who left NFL Network for ESPN, has been on ESPN now for the last 2 weeks.
Nice addition, by the way.
Just dishing his takes with Greeny.
It's good.
And he said he's hearing a couple things for draft night, that the Browns and the Giants are not hanging up the phone as teams call them and ask about a trade. and that some of those teams are putting a feeler out to move up for Ashton Genty. That he might not fall beyond the Raiders at 6.
Yep.
He might not fall beyond the Jaguars at 5. You might have to move up to like the second pick if you want to assure yourself of Ashton Genty. Could he? I mean, if you're the Bears, it's not that far up the board to go 10-2, and you've got some other draft capital. That would give your guy Ben Johnson the not a direct comparison, but like the Jahmyr Gibbs. He's already got DeAndre Swift in that backfield, but you could add that Saquon Barkley guy to your offense, and you've already revamped your offensive line. You add that dude at running back, and you take so much more pressure off Caleb Williams. So I think if the Bears make an aggressive move for like Ashton Genty, I'd look a little sideways over there from a Vikings perspective.
Yeah, the only two guys the Bears could, if they trade up, that they could get that scare me are Genty and Hunter. Hunter scares me a lot. I think that kid's going to be phenomenal. Beyond that, I am still so on the Bears thing. Let's just circle back on that for a second. With what Thor had said about Caleb Williams' skill set, I am curious to see how he and Ben Johnson work together. I'm still very curious. I think it's fair. I think it's fair to say, especially if Ben Johnson has a system and that's his system and this is what he wants, and like it's not a and not. I'm not saying Kevin O'Connell is not set in what he wants, but I feel like there's way more flexibility there. If Ben Johnson is a my way or the highway, this is, hey, Caleb Williams, this is what we're going to do. And Caleb's like, it's not really what I do. I'm not completely sold here yet because I trust Thor. And Thor has been adamant that it is an oil and water type of situation potentially.
So you're saying the Bears could draft a Jackson Dart with the 10th overall pick and then trade Caleb Williams.
I'm saying I could see some problems when Caleb starts for Ben Johnson if Ben Johnson's not flexible.
Yep. Yeah, that's going to be
but
the
Genty
most.
Scares me, no question.
Yeah, if Genty does go in the top 5, it would be, I think, the first time in 7 years that a running back gets drafted in the top 5. We had a nice little run there for a few years of top 5 and top 10 drafted running backs. Saquon Barkley was the 2nd overall pick. Leonard Fournette was, I think, a top 5 pick.
Wow, yeah, he was.
Zeke Elliott, Todd Gurley was a top 10 pick. But the league in the last 7 years has kind of moved away from, and sometimes there's just not a guy like that at that position. But with copycat league, right? We love to look at blueprints and try to replicate. And teams are looking at, boy, the Ravens and the Eagles just ran for 3,000 yards, including playoffs.
Yep.
Okay, Ashton Genty is that guy that can help us duplicate that ground attack. So I would not be shocked, whether it's Bears or somebody else, if there is a trade up the board to assure yourself of the best running back in this class.
Just if you do that, make sure that you've got an offensive line, and I think the Bears do now. That can carry him though, because I could see some buffoon team like, oh man, he's great, he's fantastic.
Like the Jaguars, or
yes, like how's your line? Oh, who cares about our line? He's a mover and a shaker. No, you're idiots.
Is that what the Jaguars front office sounds like? You guys,
Napoleon Dynamite. Yeah, you're idiots.
Oh, idiots. Trevor Lawrence throwing that football over those mountains.
Actually, you know what? That's
the Appalachians.
That's not a bad comp. Could see
Trevor
that.
Lawrence and Uncle Rico.
Uncle Rico. Yeah, I could definitely see that.
Coach would have put me in.
What a one state. I
love it.
Back in '82.
All right, boys. There's still just a little smattering of NFL takes. Plenty more where that came from next week as we get into draft reaction mode here on Purple Daily NFL Takes. And yeah, scorenorth.com/draft for all details about Thursday night at the Fillmore. And we will be live also on the Purple Daily YouTube channel at 7 o'clock. For the Sports Dad, for Producer Dex, I'm Phil. See you guys.